Picture this, mate. Your parents are in their early 70s. They sell the family home for about $1.2 million and use part of that money to move into a retirement village that looked absolutely fantastic in the brochure. There's a pool, a bowls club, a full activities calendar, the whole lot. 8 years later, your dad passes away, and your mum decides she wants to move closer to you and the grandkids. She gets the final paperwork back from the village, expecting a decent amount to come back, but instead it's much less than she imagined. Deferred management fees, refurbishment costs, exit charges, they've all been deducted. And suddenly you're sitting across the table trying to explain where a big chunk of the money went. So here's the question, mate. Are retirement villages actually a smart financial move? Or can they quietly become one of the biggest money mistakes an Aussie family makes without even realizing it until years later? Because the brochures are full of lifestyle photos and happy retirees enjoying the pool. What they don't show you is the spreadsheet. And if you're the one who's going to help your parents make this decision one day, it's worth understanding how all this works before anyone signs on the dotted line. Now, first up, let's clear something up because most people under 40 don't really know what a retirement village actually is. It's not a nursing home and it's not aged care. It's basically a community designed for people, generally over the age of 55, with units, townhouses, or apartments, plus shared facilities like a pool, community hall, maybe even a bowling green, and sometimes a bit of on-site support. On the surface, it genuinely looks like a great lifestyle upgrade. And for plenty of people, it is. The issue isn't really the lifestyle, it's the way the contracts are structured, and that's where things can get confusing pretty quickly. Here's the bit that almost nobody explains properly. Buying into a retirement village isn't always like buying a normal house. Depending on the village, you could be signing a lease for life agreement, a loan license arrangement, or in some places, especially in Victoria and some newer developments, you might actually get a straight-up or freehold title where you own the unit. Under lease for life or loan license models, you're paying a large upfront amount for the right to live there, but the operator still legally owns the property. That's very different from a freehold setup where the resident owns the unit. And trust me, mate, that difference affects a lot more than people realize. It can impact Centrelink, how much money comes back when you leave, and even what eventually gets passed on to your family. So that's one of the very first things you should check. Now let's talk numbers because this is where things start getting interesting. A typical two-bedroom unit can cost anywhere from around $450,000 to well over $750,000 just to move in. And in some premium coastal or city locations, you're looking at $900,000 or even more than $1 million. On top of that, you'll usually pay a weekly service fee, often somewhere between $150 and $250, for things like gardening, maintenance, insurance, and keeping the village running. So far, nothing too surprising. But then comes the one that catches so many families off guard, the deferred management fee, or DMF. Some people simply call it the exit fee. The tricky part is that it builds up quietly every year you live there, but you don't really feel it until you leave. A pretty common structure is somewhere around 3 to 6.5% each year, capped at roughly 30 to 40% depending on the contract. And unfortunately, that's not always the end of it. When the unit is handed back, there can also be refurbishment costs. Maybe new carpet, fresh paint, updated fittings, or sometimes even bigger renovations before the operator lists it again. That alone can easily cost another $20,000 to $50,000. Then you've got selling or marketing costs, and depending on the contract and the state, weekly fees might even keep running until the unit is relicensed or sold, although some states have now started putting limits on that. Then there's capital growth, and this is where every contract seems to have its own rules. Some let residents keep all the growth, some split it with the operator, and others calculate it in ways that honestly aren't easy to compare. The takeaway here isn't that one contract is automatically good or bad. It's simply that you should never assume your parents will get the same deal as someone else's. Every retirement village contract is different. Now, before you completely write retirement villages off, it's only fair to look at the other side of the story too. Think about the alternative. Staying in a big family home means paying rates, insurance, repairs, and dealing with all the maintenance that comes with a house that's often much bigger than one or two people really need. It can also become pretty lonely after losing a partner, and we know social isolation can seriously affect both physical and mental health as people get older. If someone starts needing care at home, those costs can add up quickly too. In-home support often sits somewhere around $40 to $60 an hour depending on where you live, and if daily care becomes necessary, the yearly bill can become enormous. A good retirement village offers something that's actually hard to put a price on: community, neighbors close by, activities, security, and not having to worry about mowing the lawn or fixing the roof. For the right person, that trade-off can absolutely make sense. So what's really the issue? Honestly, mate, it's not retirement villages themselves. The biggest problem is contracts that are incredibly difficult to understand, especially when families are making decisions during stressful times. Downsizing is emotional. Losing a partner is emotional. And that's probably the worst time to hand someone a 100-page legal document full of complicated clauses. That's exactly why investigations from ABC News and reports from National Seniors Australia have repeatedly raised concerns about confusing exit fees, buried contract terms, and residents only discovering the true costs when they're ready to leave. Now here's some genuinely good news. During 2026, we've seen some of the biggest retirement village reforms Australia has had in years. The important thing to remember, though, is these aren't national changes. They're happening state by state, so the rules depend on where you live. In Western Australia, new laws pass Parliament and start rolling out from September 2026, requiring operators to pay exit entitlements within 12 months after someone leaves. South Australia introduced a new framework from the 2nd of February 2026 with stronger disclosure requirements and clearer contracts. Victoria also brought in the Retirement Villages Amendment Act 2025 from the 1st of May 2026, delivering the biggest overhaul of retirement village laws there in decades. But and this is important, these reforms generally aren't retrospective. If someone signed an older contract years ago, those new protections usually don't apply. So you still need to go in with your eyes wide open. So if you're helping your parents make this decision, where do you actually start? I'd start with the contract, not the glossy brochure. Get a solicitor who specializes in retirement village law, because it's a very different area from standard property law. Ask them to break down exactly what the exit costs would look like after 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years. Ask whether your parents keep any capital growth. Ask how long properties in that village usually take to sell. Ask what happens to the weekly fees if someone moves out or passes away, because that varies depending on both the contract and the state. Most importantly, ask them to show you a real dollar figure. If the unit was handed back tomorrow, how much money would actually come back? And while you're at it, have a look through the last few years of village budgets too, because steadily increasing service fees can really affect someone living on a fixed income. Then compare it properly with the alternatives. What would it actually cost to stay in the family home if you included renovations, accessibility upgrades, and in-home care? What about buying a smaller freehold townhouse where there are no exit fees and the family keeps all the capital growth? Or maybe even looking at a land lease community, which has become one of Australia's fastest growing retirement options in 2026. Sometimes, after doing all the maths, the retirement village genuinely comes out on top. Other times it doesn't. The important thing is making that decision with a spreadsheet in front of you, not over tea and biscuits while a sales consultant is waiting for a signature. At the end of the day, mate, this really isn't just about retirement villages. It's about protecting what will probably be the biggest asset your family ever owns. Handing over hundreds of thousands of dollars under a contract nobody fully understands can affect your parents' finances for years, and it can also shape what eventually gets passed down to future generations. Retirement villages aren't a scam, but they're not a magic solution either. They're a lifestyle choice with a real financial cost, and whether that cost feels fair or ends up being much higher than expected comes down to the contract, the operator, and how well prepared your family was before signing. The reforms introduced during 2026 are definitely a step in the right direction, but they haven't removed the need to do your homework. So go in informed, ask plenty of questions, get proper legal advice, and treat it like the 6 or 7-figure financial decision it really is, because that's exactly what it is. And if this video helped you understand something that could genuinely save your family a lot of money one day, do me a favor, mate. Hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. I'll catch you in the next video.